Welcome to Coffee to Go, where we center ourselves in the scriptures, seasons, and holy days of the Christian tradition. I'm Karin Peter, here with Blake Smith, and we welcome you on the journey. So we are still in Ordinary Time, and the season of Ordinary Time has approximately 30 Sundays. I think it depends where All Saints falls. So if All Saints falls on the Sunday, we got 29. But it runs from Pentecost to the end of the Christian year. And then Advent begins the new Christian year with a new cycle. So this week, this month, month of August, Blake, we're going to be spending the entire month of August in the Old Testament. This is new for us. And so bear with us and extend grace because we're probably going to need it. And I think we probably need a little context. So we're doing several weeks in a row, and we're in Genesis, and then we're kind of in Exodus, and it may seem choppy, but really it's one big long story that's being told here. There's one narrative that these pieces fit into. So here's kind of an overview of the story, and Blake's going to correct me where I get it wrong or forget a piece.
Nothing expected to need correction.
Yeah. Really, we record these in the morning, so sometimes neither one of us are really thoroughly ready for the nitty-gritty details, but we'll give it a shot. So today we're going to talk about Jacob, and then we're going to move on to Joseph, and that's Jacob's son. Jacob had a bunch of sons, but he loves Joseph best, and this is really an important part of the story. It's what a fiction writer might call a plot device. So something has to happen for other things to happen in the narrative. So when I talk like that, I don't mean, if you're a person that thinks this is like actual history, then that's okay. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying the writing of it uses some techniques that help us follow the story. So basically, Joseph, or his dad, Jacob, played favorites. Now, Blake, I don't know. I only had one child, so I didn't have the opportunity to play favorites. I don't think you want to record anything at this moment. But
all I can say is that I was the favorite. I don't have favorites, but I, of course, was the favorite.
Oh, wonderful. My sister and I argue over who's the favorite.
If my sister's listening to this, she's probably regurgitating a little bit right now.
Oh, all right. Well, it's important to understand that Jacob, I get the J's confused. That
a
Jacob,
lot of J's.
Yes, did play favorites, and he loved Joseph, the youngest of his sons. And this doesn't sit well with the rest of the brothers, and so they actually plot to take care of him, which would not have a good ending. And at the last minute, they're like, no, we probably can't do that. So let's sell him to a traveling caravan. And they did. And he was carried off into Egypt. Now, that's the plot device because it does a couple of things. In the narrative of the people of Israel, it sets up this connection between the patriarchal figures of Jacob and Joseph, and it continues that narrative into Egypt. And that's important because the people of Israel have to end up in Egypt for the Exodus to happen, right? So now we understand how they got into Egypt. And you don't really realize this when you take these stories out of context one at a time. But if you listen to them all month, hopefully it will we'll be able to connect the narrative together and offer a chance to see the bigger picture and begin to see how the New Testament writers also made connections to these stories and tend to write in a way that reminds us that Jesus is being treated or God is behaving in the New Testament writings in a similar way or in a connected way to how God behaved or how the patriarchal figures of the people of Israel behaved in the Old Testament. And that's important for continuity and structure. So we're going to start this week with Jacob. He has left home we're not using the story of Jacob and Esau and how Jacob tricks his brother out of his rightful inheritance, but that happened and it did not go well. There was a big falling out, and now he has to deal with the mess he made. So now that we've had our longest intro ever, Blake.
Yeah, but it's a helpful intro. I remember when I took my first Bible class in seminary, and I just remember being surprised, I guess maybe would be, because we typically read these stories separate. We hear them in bits and pieces, and to see the threads that
Yeah.
go through the biblical text, especially well, within the canon, within the Hebrew text, within the New Testament, but also then across. And so this is a great chance for us to get that. So I'm glad you lifted that up for us. So as you said, we're going to be in Genesis today, and this is from the 32nd chapter of Genesis, and it's the 22nd through the 31st verse. The same night he got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, yet my life is preserved." The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. But why does this matter? First of all, wow, ow.
Yeah.
Every time I
Yeah.
read that, he struck him on the hip, and it wasn't just a strike. He took it out of joint, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Ugh.
and I think that's something like how we kind of get out of joint in general when
Yeah.
something goes against what we are
When we
hoping
take
for,
an
what we're.
emotional hit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Jacob takes his family and he leaves home, which is a familiar story. Happened with Abraham, right? We talked about that in some previous episodes. And they go towards wherever this encounter with his brother is going to take place. He's going to encounter Esau later, and so he's just headed in that direction. But during the night, Jacob wrestles with what is often said to be an angel when the story is told, but in the actual scripture, as we just heard, it says he was wrestling with a person. It specifically in this particular version says man, but he was wrestling with a person. And then there are still others who would say he was wrestling with God.
Yeah. So when I read this, Blake, I think about like how many times have you had a dream where in your dream everything makes perfect sense that's happening? So you're like wrestling
Never.
physically, never, but you're wrestling
Wait a
with a
minute.
person, but you're like in a Target store, right? Or some weird place. And then all of a sudden your dream morphs into something else. And now you're not in the Target store, you're in your backyard and you're wrestling with the doghouse. And it doesn't make any sense in the dreams. And then you wake up and you have this sense of wrestling, but your brain is going to put it in perspective, at least mine does, and goes like, oh, that must have been me wrestling with, whatever decision I'm trying to make. Do I need a new tattoo or do I need to buy a car? Whatever I'm wrestling with. So that when you think about wrestling with a person and wrestling with God or wrestling with an angel, you can look at it metaphorically or whatever. I mean, sometimes it's just your brain, sometimes it's something sacred.
It is. And there are many times when I wake up and I think that has absolutely nothing to do with anything I'm dealing with. I had one of those recently and I woke up and I'm like, what in the heck is going on
Mhm.
in my subconscious that I'm not aware of? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But some of those we come out of with this deep impression, something that sticks with us.
Yeah.
And in this case, in this particular story of the wrestling at night, Jacob takes a direct hit to his hip, like I mentioned earlier, and that is significant. I mean, it's one thing, like I said, if you get hit, you get a bruise, but to have something go out of joint, this actually leaves him limping. He is different because of it, and he's marked forever.
So, yeah. So thinking about that limping, part of me is really vindictive. It goes, well, he deserved that because he
Right?
did to Esau, right? But that's probably not the point of the story. It's probably
If
more
we all
about,
got what we deserved, it would not be good,
it
right?
would not be a good story. So it's probably more God-centered than that, in the sense that I think we're all somehow marked after we wrestle with or encounter God's presence or encounter the sacred in some significant way. It leaves us different. And for some of us, it leaves us limping. You know, it
Yeah.
just does.
Yeah. And so this, of course, doesn't just happen in dreams. We talk about, something transformative maybe coming to us, and maybe if we can figure it out in a dream, what it means. But it also happens in our general encounters with the divine and sometimes with each other. And in those cases, sometimes we're marked or changed or transformed. And then there are other times, I think, when we probably have to get hit a few times. It maybe take a couple of out of joint experiences to really jar us and help us to see what's before us. But regardless of what it is, in some way we are changed. We're marked. And Jacob was definitely marked by this limp after he wrestled in this experience with God. So that kind of leads us to then today to ask some questions about what our experiences have been like. So the first question that we might ask is, when have I wrestled with God? And as a result of that, have I been marked or changed because of a spiritual experience or a spiritual encounter? And then finally, what kinds of things am I wrestling with now? I'd been told before that if you're not wrestling with something, you're not paying attention to the world, right?
There's a lot to wrestle with right now for people who are trying to walk a spiritual path or walk a path of responsible faith. And that just seems to be the context of the world right now. So, in thinking about how we could experience this, I think that what came to mind is when I was younger and my dad and I would be doing something and I would get frustrated, I would put my hands on my hips. I wasn't like stomping my feet or anything, but I put my hands on my hips and my dad would go, "You look just like my mother when you do that." So I think, like a lot of people, we put our hands on our hips when we're emphasizing a point, maybe, or emphasizing our frustration or determination. So this week, let's use that kind of motion that we have as part of our human experience, and we'll use our hips as part of our prayer conversation instead. So it's basically this: it's put your hand on your hip to kind of remind you of the story of this moment of Jacob being changed or transformed, or simply Jacob wrestling. And then when you offer a prayer or you meditate or you do some deep resting or thinking about the changes happening in your own life or what you're wrestling with, or maybe what needs to happen in your life, keep that hand on your hip to emphasize it, to keep it in your memory. When we do something physical or with motor skills, our brain helps record it differently. Put that on your hip and offer your prayer or do your meditation this week. Try to do it every day and see what that feels like for you.
I can't help but think that at this point in my life, I'm putting my hand on my hip, usually to assuage the pain.
And that's a reasonable time to meditate
But
or pray as well.
I am definitely mindful of, why I'm doing it. So,
Well, then this is going to work really well for you this week, Blake.
oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, our blessing today comes from Traveling in the Dark by Jan Richardson. And it was written for Advent originally, but it seems to work really well with Jacob's experiences in the dark. Go slow if you can, slower, more slowly still. Friendly, dark, or fearsome, this is no place to break your neck by rushing, by running, by crashing into what you cannot see. Then again, it is true. Different darks have different tasks. And if you have arrived here unawares, if you have come in peril or in pain, this might be no place for you should dawdle. I do not know what these shadows ask of you, what they might hold that means you good or ill. It is not for me to reckon whether you should linger or you should leave. But this is what I can ask for you, that in the darkness there be a blessing, that in the shadows there be a welcome, that in the night you be encompassed by the love that knows your name. Well, that wraps it up here for Coffee to Go this week. We are glad you joined us, and we hope that you will join us next time for the next part of our journey through the liturgical seasons and holy days of the Christian tradition.